Hello and welcome to the third and last tutorial video in the non-metallic metal Stormcast series. We have done the gold and we have done the steel sword. Now it's time to show you all how to do the blue armor. Unfortunately, we had a few technical issues recording this video, but it still contains the materials needed to learn and replicate this technique. We thank all of our patrons for this video: Mark Alexander, Carl Maarten, Jason D. Fluffer, Jonathan Edlund, and Matt Rutowski. The editing for this video was done by the awesome Maarten Kramer. I am Oscar Lars. See you next time. Now, let's begin. First, we need to define our palette. We're gonna use Model Air French Blue, Model Air Armor Brown, also called Tank Brown. I think that's the old one. And then any white. Here I'm using Scale 75 white, and then any black. And you can use whichever one you want. I use Scale 75. The brushes I will use is Winsor Newton Series 7 size 1 and 000. We're gonna paint two things today to make sure I give you the information on how to paint two very different types of surfaces. I have already undercoated the model with black paint to give it a nice surface to work on. Then I already mixed the blue, black, and a bit of brown and coated the shoulder pad and chest plate in it. If you need more info on how to do this, see my sword tutorial. Now, I have mixed in a little bit more white to brighten it up, and I'm putting it on the bottom of the chest plate and going from the center and out. Secondly, I edge highlight pretty thickly the edges of the breastplate area. I then divide breastplate areas into two with a horizontal line. I then fill in the top part of it. I also give the bottom ridge a little more thickness, leaving the darkest area just below the center line. Don't forget to hit all the tiny bolts to build up that color on the areas of the model. All edges should also be edge highlighted. On the shoulder pad, I create this oval shape with the mixed color. Here we are going to move slowly inwards towards the middle as we get brighter and more saturated with our colors. Then we edge highlight the top trim of the shoulder pad as well. I also get the edge of the plate below the shoulder pad a little bit of love too. Lastly, I give it a small line on the bottom of the shoulder pad to create a separation and a dark line closest to where the gold would be. With the second mix of highlights, I mix in a bit of white, but also a bit of blue. You're gonna have to make a decision on how blue you want the armor to be. You can go a lot more blue or a lot more steel if you want on the armor. I recommend mixing in blue every other time at least here, but as I said, the more blue, the bluer armor. So it's up to you how you want it to look. We apply the paint in the same exact steps as in the previous step, just slightly smaller and more thinner than the previous coat to give it a nice transition. We are now going to cut through several layers that follow the exact rhythm as the previous layers. For the fourth highlight, we mix in a little bit more white again to brighten up the color a bit more. I'm not adding blue this time. Follow the same steps as the previous layer, slightly smaller and thinner to keep the transition going. Okay, we have now added several layers, and it's time to get into the smaller details. So here I'm gonna switch up to my 000 brush. Now you can use a size 1 here. There's no right or wrong with the brush choice that you're making in terms of size. I just like a smaller brush as it blocks less of both for myself and the purpose of this tutorial. I am now applying this layer much smaller than we did before, and it's because we've made a longer transition already while we cut, and it's time to start bringing up those whites from mid-tone. Okay, so a few highlights later, and we are ready for a pure white. I apply this pure white very sparingly. You don't want to overdo this. You want to make sure that that white is at the exact right locations for it to start sparkling. If you overuse the white, then it's going to be problematic later on. After the pure white, I add some dark mix and make some scratches into the armor to give it some history. I don't like my models to look like they've never seen battle, so for me, this is a given to do. I mix black, blue, and brown to give it a rich black to work with. Then add a thin white highlight underneath every scratch. This is meant to be the reflection of the light that hits the lower lip of the scratch. Take your time here to make sure that the white reflection is really thin. If it's too thick, it's not going to convince the same realism. Now I've done a blue armor that's a little bit more steel-like than my personal army is. If you end up here and feel great about it, awesome, then move on to the other parts of the armor or to the next model if you've already done all the armor parts. But if you want it bluer, then follow this next step. The next step is to use a blue glaze to your model. A glaze is applied in very thin coats to tint the color already on your model. I mix a little bit of it with some Lamy medium. I'd rather apply too thin than too thick coats, as I can always apply more if I want to make it more blue, but I can't take it off the model if it becomes too blue. Spread the glaze out thin on top of the painted surface you want to be more blue. Make sure that if you apply multiple coats of glaze, it has to dry in between every coat. It's really important. Okay, so here I've applied a couple of coats of the glaze and it's much more blue. Now I need to just add back in the highlights that makes the armor shine like metal. Okay, now I'll add it back in the highlights and the miniature is done. I hope you guys enjoyed this last video in the Stormcast non-metallic metal series. We will be back in the future with a different tutorial focuses. If you like these videos and want to see more of them in the future, featuring topics such as rust effects, freehand for beginners, etc., please do not hesitate to go to our Patreon, link can be found below, and contribute a few of your hard-earned dollars to our cause to bring more tutorial videos for everyone in our hobby.